Hey guys, welcome back to another Genshin Impact video, and this one's going to be much different from what I usually make. So typically whenever I do live commentary, I do tier list videos or anything that's a bit more long form, takes too much time to script, or ordinarily I would mostly just do scripted content. But this time around I wanted to make a video talking about Genshin's 5.0 special program because I think probably very similar to the sentiments of I think other creators and other a lot of players actually, is that I am pleasantly surprised with what they've presented to us in this program and what's to come for version 5.0. As you know where I stand for the people who have been watching me for a long time, I've always retained this kind of cautious optimism that while Genshin does seem to be expressing an interest to continue improving and trying new things, especially like in terms of the characters they made and the gameplay adjustments that they do consider implementing, I have been somewhat more on the side of, I guess, not necessarily pessimistic, but I've definitely felt like there was not as much of a sense of urgency on Hoyo's part to implement real sweeping changes for the game, which kind of culminated into my thoughts on Natlan being a sort of make or break patch where it will either put Genshin back in terms of like, you will either revive the goodwill of the player base, or at least the player base that is much more critical towards the game, or it will solidify their doubts or their reasons to, I guess, like not play anymore. But I've not really been the type of person to be Genshin is dead, since I think that a game doesn't necessarily have to be super successful or super mainstream to continue drawing millions of views and subsequently millions of dollars in revenue. However, with this game being a very important part of Vars 2, and just a big part of my Vars brand as a whole, I always want to see Genshin Impact continue to improve, especially in light of all the new gacha games that have been coming out as of late. From what I've seen in 5.0 from the special program so far, all I can say is, you know what? I'll give credit. I'm very surprised and very pleasantly, I guess, impressed by what they've presented to us in terms of the quality of life features and the gameplay updates. Now, for the first, 45 minutes of the special program, they kind of introduced the new gameplay mechanics, new, lore and mythos of Natlan, alongside the new characters that are coming out at the beginning, like Kachina and Molani, and then Kanish. So we're not really going to be talking about them for this video because I wanted to mostly focus on the gameplay quality of life changes that they put into. So apart from all the different overworld exploration features that you find throughout the video, and also things like, for example, being able to transform into the different types of, we call them Pokemon, but they're obviously going to be something else, basically dinosaurs. Towards the end of the special program, before they kind of got into all the sort of podcasty stuff, they actually went into a plethora of different gameplay quality of life and mechanics updates, which I think is super important to go over. So as you can see, this is just me checking out the special program, and I wanted to go over the changes that they implemented because a lot of what they put into, I guess like the dev demo, are things that we've been asking for a very long time. Credit where it's due. This is a very strong case of Hoyo listening to players and actually responding and reciprocating to feedback pretty well, because in the past they've implemented a few things like, oh, we did this or this tiny little change, which is appreciated, mind you. Not every single change has to be super massive in volume or size, but that only makes this much more impressive because they've done so much more than just the bare minimum. They've actually done a lot of things that I think were very gratuitous in a good way, mind you. So let's first begin with the anniversary rewards. So this has always been a pretty contentious topic among the Genshin fanbase, right? Like the fact that they've been pretty parsimonious with what they've given to us for every version. Now, I think in the past they have awarded us the standard 1600 Primo Gems or the 10 Fates, which is what they're also doing here. However, they're giving us 20 pulls. I still think it would be good if it's funny because when I actually saw this, I'd be like, it would be cool if we could get a free 5-star character. That'd be awesome. Most gachas, when they do anniversary rewards, they do something along the lines of that. I'll get to that in a moment because I'm sure most of you have already seen the program. But what caught my attention was the Sanctifying Elixir. And this, I think, is the most important thing that people are talking about. In short, the Sanctifying Elixir is essentially if I can find it, sorry, it's going to take a minute, the Genshin equivalent of the self-modeling resin, wherein you can choose what main stat you want, and then the substats that you want to go with it. Of course, there are limitations. You can only choose 2. For example, you can only choose 2 substats, and then for each one you choose, it increases the cost of the Sanctifying Elixir. So over here in the main affix, which is the main stat, You could choose whatever stat you want. It's funny that they actually point to the goblet because that's what most people are going to be using it for. And then you could choose 2 substats to go along with it, which of course for most people are going to be crit rate and crit damage. As you can see here, it costs 4 elixirs to do this. If I remember correctly, as you see right here, there's 4. My hope is that they continue to release these in liberal quantity so that it's not like the self-modeling resin where you only get like 1 per month. People are obviously joking about how, yeah, you can only, you can still do all of this and all 4 or 5 upgrades will go into the defense or the other 2 stats that you don't care about. But this is obviously a very welcome change that I think many people have been desperately waiting for. And one issue with the self-modeling resin that I think a lot of people have pointed out is that even though you can determine the main stat, you could always get garbage substats. But this time around, Genshin's allowing us to choose 2 of the substats. So while you're still beholden to elements of RNG that can screw you over, at the very least, you can choose 2 of the 4 substats, which means you could still get a decent, let's say 30 crit value, 25 to 35 crit value goblet, which for most people is a keeper because the goblet is the worst artifact to work on. So I'm cool with that. I think this should have, I'm not going to be kind of, I guess, entitled. I wish this came out a lot sooner, but the fact that they're implementing it now, and in a way that went beyond what most people were expecting, because I think people would have been happy even with just the main stat choice. But they're taking it a step further and giving us access to 2 substats, which is very much appreciated. Okay, the second thing I want to point out, and by the way, if you hear any like background noise, I think there's like construction going on in the background. I apologize for that. I'll try my best to edit it out. But the next thing that they implement that I think is worth mentioning, there were a lot of things they talked about, but the next one is that they are actually implementing more changes to the gacha system, one of which being that the fate or the epitomized path, which is the weapon banner, you'll notice that the fate point went down from 2 to 1. In other words, you only have to fail the 50-50 once as opposed to twice to get the weapon. Basically making it similar to the original character pull, where you only have to fail 50-50 once to get the weapon you want. This obviously will cut down the cost of acquiring an important weapon for a character significantly, since not only can you just get lucky and win the weapon you want, but even if you fail, the next one's going to be the guaranteed weapon. Before, we had all the memes of Staff of Homeless, and then now we had the epitomized path with the fate accumulation or fate acquisition or whatever, which isn't that much better because you essentially run the risk of failing twice and still having to cost, the weapon still costing you upwards of maybe $300. But they brought it down a little bit, which is good. It's very good. I think this is a welcome change to have, and I think, again, they should have implemented this earlier, but I'm not trying to go with that attitude because it's important to express appreciation for the efforts that they put into this version. Again, some people are saying don't set your standards too low, and to where stuff like this, which many people would consider the bare minimum, is, you shouldn't be praising it. But I do think it's important because this is a major change in what Genshin or how Hoyo has been addressing player feedback and stuff like that. Like, this is it's a change of pace from them. It's uncharacteristic of them to go this hard on quality of life changes for Genshin Impact, and I think that's why it's important to mention, because if they continue doing this, then this will be essentially very important for the future of Genshin. And I always talk about that, the future implications of how Genshin can continue to maintain a strong footing in the gacha sector. And I think this is the best way to do it, is that just implementing quality of life changes, making the game as accessible and enjoyable for players both new and old, is integral to the long-term sustenance of a gacha, or just any game in general. And on that note, when I said that it'd be nice if they can give us a 5-star selector, they actually are. So they're giving us the ability to select any one of the standard 5 stars we have available. Now, for a long-time player, this might not be that useful for the sheer fact that most of us already have copies of these characters. But for new players in particular, these characters are still quite useful, right? Koting's a good Dendro attacker in the sense that she can provide as much electro that you need for aggravate. Mona is still decent, especially if you don't have like all the wide variety of broken hydro characters you have available, and for new players they wouldn't. Sheen is fantastic, Tignati's great, Diluc is good too. Dia, again, if you don't have that many characters, you could use her. Even Chi-Chi to an extent, like if you're missing a lot of the cast, and for many players when they're starting out, the fact that they're giving us the option to just get the 5-star character, there's no like, high rate of banner like the Chronicle Wish, is appreciated. Because one thing that they're doing is, as you can see from the subtitles right here, from this year onwards, during every anniversary, we are getting a 5-star selector, which is huge. Because what they're actually planning on doing is that in addition to giving us the option to do this, they have expressed a desire. One sec, where is it? Aha, there it is. They've expressed a desire to add new 5 stars to the standard wish. Now, because of the legality of advertising in China, supposedly the characters that have been marketed as limited, for example, like Kazuha, Nahida, Farina, Yaemiko, Yoimiya, Ito, Yelan, I'll Hate Them, Novelette, Linny, those characters are not allowed to be put in the Wanderlust Invocation, which is a standard banner, because that would be false advertising. They were marketed to us as limited time characters, and if they make them permanent at any point, that's illegal. However, because of the way they worded it to where the characters can't be put in the Wanderlust Invocation, they can still make a different standard banner. Like they can do an updated standard banner and then reinstate those characters in there. But the fact that they implemented this sentence right here, and we will continue to add new characters in a standard wish, 4-star characters are always implemented into the standard banner after their initial release. It wouldn't be too unreasonable to assume that they're referring to 5-star characters, which means what I said earlier, I made the banner video, the standard banner video, if they are adding new characters to the standard banner, and then if the 5-star selector from here applies to those new characters, whatever they may be, if it's Albedo, if it's Klee, if it's Venti, probably not Venti because Archon status and whatnot, but if it's any of the new characters that come out, this matters a lot more, which is why I'm excited, because if they do enable us to pull more than these 7 characters, then I'm super excited. Either that, alternatively, when they say they're continuing to add new characters to the standard wish, it might be the Tignati and Dia treatment where they add certain characters, and if those certain characters are pretty good, which I hope they are, like Tignati's not bad, Dia's a disappointment, I would say, by this point. She's not like unusable per se, but she's definitely not what we expected her to be. Tignati's good. So they aren't against putting meta-relevant characters into the standard pool. So the fact that if you combine this with them expressing an interest in adding more characters to the standard wish, I'm very optimistic with what they're going to do for future versions, because they've promised that we're going to be getting one every single version. A few more things that I want to go over. Those are, I think, like the 2 super major changes that people have been talking about: the artifact set selector item, as well as the character 5-star, the free 5-star and whatnot, as well as the weapon banner, things like that. Those are like the 3 main things. I do want to go over a couple more things before, just because I think it's worth noting. So when it comes to stamina, the only statues of the 7, or the only, I guess, offerings for the Oculus that increase your stamina are for Mondstadt and Liyue, requiring players to only, to essentially have to max out, or max completion, or try to get as much as they can out of Mondstadt and Liyue. Now they're making it so it doesn't matter what statue you upgrade, whether Sumeru, Fontaine, Inazuma, Natlan, Mondstadt, Liyue, all of them will contribute towards the 240 stamina count. Unfortunately, they're not extending the stamina limit any higher than 240, but now they're making so new players aren't pigeonholed into Mondstadt and Liyue if they want to upgrade their stamina cost. If they just want to go straight to Inazuma, straight to Sumeru, straight to Natlan, they can do that and still work on getting their stats up that way, which is a good quality of life change to have. I think it's important that they do that for new players, especially because longtime players, we've, back when there was not much content to explore, we grinded out Mondstadt, we grinded out Liyue because that's all that there was to do. But if a new player joining in, they have 6 regions to think about, and if they want to express interest in exploring one of the newer ones, they couldn't do that prior because they were focused on getting stamina, but now you can use all type of statues to get your stamina up, which is very appreciated. I know I keep saying appreciated, but that's really how I feel about these changes. They're appreciated. It's nice that they implement quality of life updates in terms of quality and quantity all at once. Next one is going to be, I think it's in the same section right here, so we're going to skip forward a little bit, but they're increasing the amount of rewards that you get from multiple sources, not the least of which being the Shrine of Depths. So you see right here, where is it? Right here, yeah. So here you can get 80 Primo Gems from a chest in the Shrine of Depth chest, which I'm assuming is going to also apply to just a lot of other ways to get more Primo Gems. But the point being, they're giving us more free resources and more free currency, which then complements the lower cost of acquiring the 5-star weapons and 5-star characters. That's going to be important because, again, with there being a lot more characters necessary for the Imaginarium Theater, and it's funny that we mentioned Imaginarium Theater because they're actually adding a hard mode. There's easy, normal, hard, and then there's a harder mode, which requires no less than 22 characters. So of course they need to make characters more accessible, especially for newer players who are trying to get to endgame very quickly. And on that front, I believe I need to find it. I'm sorry that this is all scattered over the place. I could have done this scripted, but I just want to get this out as soon as possible. In addition to the rewards that they're giving us for the, what's it called? In addition to the rewards they're giving us for the anniversary, returning players, and I think this is also, again, very much appreciated to have for new players. New and returning players, I believe, they have access to get 10 more pulls, which isn't much, but again, it's a gesture that they didn't have to do and that they're doing. So on top of all the things that they're doing, they're being much more charitable, or I guess much more generous with their rewards, and from where they were before, that's an improvement to make. Couldn't we draw the comparison that, they're still falling short of other games' generosity? Yes, but in the scope of Genshin and what they've done so far, this is a significant improvement from the, the debacles that happened before with like the 3 pulls for 3rd anniversary, things like that. It's also funny that we mentioned free stuff because for completing the Archon quest, or just, I guess, participating in the Archon quest, you just get 500 Primo Gems. So I guess that's 3 pulls and 20 Primos to go along with it. Very nice to have. They're just sprinkling a few things here and there that I think is important to have. But going back to the free resources that they gave us for, well, not the free resources, but the free rewards, they're making it so that items are more attainable, which is important, of course, because certain enemies don't drop that much stuff, and so they're essentially giving us more rewards or more materials for those rare drops, one of which being the handguards, which have been notoriously difficult to obtain in mass quantities. So that's important to have. They also decided to implement more rewards in the world level, which I guess is like the final important thing I want to talk about, where the world level from level 60 increases to level 9, and that naturally will give you more benefits, more rewards, more materials, which is excellent. For players who are, towards the super end game like myself, who have more Mora materials and things than I know what to do with, it's not that necessitated, but for new players, again, we're trying to talk about new players, they're trying to make the game more accessible, and I've always expressed that Genshin's new player experience is definitely subpar. So the fact that they're doing this it's to encourage new players to try the game and to not feel like they have to spend so much time to catch up to the players who have been playing for a while. All of these things might not be super appreciated for older players or people who've been playing for a long time, but for newer players, and this is important because it's important that you bring in new demographic or a new audience to kind of take the place of players who quit. And I think that's also just something that is worth talking about, because the more they implement this, it eventually trickles to us anyway, right? And one of which being that artifacts, now, before you salvage them, they give you just Mora. Now, they give you experience, so you can convert them into artifact experience materials. Again, for old-time players who've been here for a long time who have more artifact experience than they know what to do with, like myself, this isn't super important for me or super game-changing for me, but for new players who are still trying to build up their roster, trying to build up tons of different characters, farm artifacts with tons of different units, this is a very, very welcome change to have. So the bottom line is, I haven't covered every single thing here, but I think I covered most of the important stuff, like the stat selector, the weapon getting cheaper to obtain, as well as the world level going down, or not going down, but the world level going up, and of course the free 5-star selector. Those changes, what they represent is Hoyo's willingness to cater towards players in a way that appeals much more broadly and also with much more substance, if that makes sense. Like, not even counting all the new stuff that they introduced in terms of like Natlan gameplay or the new characters and whatnot, just the quality of life features that they went over, which is something that I value very heavily, is super important for the game going forward, because I felt like a huge pain point for Genshin Impact that people have been addressing and people have been criticizing is that the game has no incentive to improve or to, I guess, build off of what they've already have. They feel content with just remaining stagnant and doing the same thing that they've always done, keeping it formulaic, very, I guess, autopilot, right? But the fact that they're implementing all these different changes proves that they're attempting to break out of their complacency and implement new changes. And with what they presented in terms of like future things, such as adding new characters to the standard banner, giving us a 5-star selector for every single version going forward, what this signifies, at least to me, is they understand that they can't just keep doing the same thing that they've been doing for versions prior and thinking that they'll get the same result. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that what this proves is they're willing to change and improve. They're willing to build from where they started. Like they realize that maybe they've been kind of coasting by a little too much with Genshin and not really putting stuff in, which is where the whole Genshin could never thing kind of spiraled into. But now they're doing this, and the magnitude of changes that they've been implementing, or that they're at least advertising in this program, why I feel so optimistic about it and why I think a lot of people feel optimistic about it and excited for it is because it's different from what Hoyo has done before. It's uncharacteristic of them in a positive way. We don't need to see changes or, immediate results. We don't need to see a huge, overhaul of the game within the span of overnight. Sometimes gradual change is important, and it might even be better, because if they do stuff one-off only, then they might just do it to satisfy the players or to appease the players and then never touch it ever again. But the fact that they've also implemented, or not implemented, but the fact that they've stated and a desire to continue making these changes and to continue doing stuff in the future, as evident by, again, 5-star selector for every single version going forward, or every single anniversary, or adding stuff to the standard banner for new characters, like these things. And they've also covered many different aspects. They didn't cover just one aspect. They covered characters, they covered pulls, they covered rewards, they covered overworld exploration, they've covered just everything. They can continue building off of that and doing that for versions later on in version 5, version 6, if there's version 7, version 8. This is a good foundation for them to start with. So overall, I'm very impressed with what they've done for this special program. Again, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not trying to be like, oh, the game is back up, everything like that. But this is a fantastic direction to take, because they are taking a direction. They're not just autopiloting through it. Of course, from the perspective of overworld exploration, story, characters, things like that, they've always been top notch, right? The overworld looks beautiful. If we go and check out the just the overworld trailer and stuff like that, all the different explorations and the scenery and the different ways you can traverse the map, like with the different what's it called, like the saurians and whatnot. I gotta find it. All the different ways they've implemented ways in which you can travel they've always been good at that. That's been their strong suit. They really capture the sense of overworld exploration that you can kind of encounter. But gameplay-wise, gameplay mechanics and systems, that's always been a pain point for Genshin. But they've expressed an interest to work on that as well. So anyways, I'm sorry for rambling on too much. I know this was kind of a very off-kilter video for my type of channel, but I hope you guys enjoyed hearing my rambling thoughts about this, especially because I did make a video talking about how Natlan was Genshin's last chance, which in hindsight might have been a little inflammatory, but now that I've seen this, I'm very hopeful and excited for Genshin's 5.0 update. I think, they're also expressing a desire to, rework Imaginary Theater, or not rework it, but find ways to make it a bit more interesting. Who knows, maybe in the future they might release more endgame content to go along with the fact that we have more resources, more characters, and more ways to, build our accounts. There's not much else I can say other than I was excited. Like when I was watching the program for the first time, I was like, holy crap, they just kept adding more and more and more. Like I would have been cool with maybe the first half of the stuff, but then they added some really sweeping changes, like the artifact selector, the getting free standard 5-star, and then with their interest in adding more 5-star characters. I was excited yesterday when I watched it. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below how you feel about Genshin 5.0, if you think that this is a reason for you to get back into the game if you haven't been playing, or if you're still not impressed. In any case, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Genshin discussions if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon in the next one. Take care.